Hello friends, I welcome you to tonight's edition of Sleep Story. If you have not done so yet, I would encourage you to subscribe to the channel, so you will be notified when a new sleep story is ready for you. In order to get into a relaxed state of mind, tonight I will take you on a journey to an aquarium, where you have rented a wonderful room with a cozy bed. If you would like to skip this relaxation exercise, you can do so and go straight to the stories with the timestamp in the description. And so, settle into a comfortable position in your bed. Close your eyes and take a deep, slow breath. Feel the support of the mattress beneath you. Allow yourself to relax into this moment. Let's take a journey to a serene aquarium where you will spend a peaceful night in a private room, surrounded by the tranquil beauty of underwater life. Imagine yourself walking through the entrance of a large, magnificent aquarium. The air is cool and filled with a subtle, refreshing scent of the ocean. Soft, ambient lighting guides you on your way as you walk through the quiet, dimly lit corridors. The aquarium is serene at this hour, and you feel a sense of calm and anticipation for the unique experience that awaits you. You approach a door marked Private Room and open it to reveal your own secluded sanctuary for the night. The room is cozy and inviting, with soft lighting that casts a warm glow over the space. The centerpiece of the room is a large, comfortable bed with plush pillows and a thick, luxurious duvet, inviting you to sink into its softness. On one side of the room, there are large glass windows that stretch from floor to ceiling, offering an unobstructed view into one of the aquarium's largest tanks. The water is illuminated with a gentle blue light, creating a serene, otherworldly ambiance. Schools of colorful fish glide gracefully through the water, their movements slow and rhythmic, adding to the tranquil atmosphere. Take a moment to look around the room. Notice the soft, woven rug beneath your feet, the cozy armchair positioned perfectly for viewing the underwater scene, and a small table with a kettle and a selection of herbal teas. There's a gentle hum from the aquarium's filtration system, a constant, soothing reminder of the life surrounding you. Lie back on the cozy bed and make yourself comfortable. Turn your attention to the glass windows and the mesmerizing scene beyond. Watch as vibrant coral sways gently with the currents, providing a home for the fish that dart in and out of its crevices. A ray glides smoothly through the water, its presence adding a sense of awe and wonder. Take a deep breath, hold it for a moment, then slowly exhale, letting go of any tension. As you keep breathing, focus on the sensation of the air filling your lungs and the feeling of relaxation as you breathe out. The tranquility of the underwater world around you and the gentle flow of the water is filling you. As you continue to breathe deeply and steadily, let your mind's eye wander over the details of the scene. Notice the delicate fins of the fish as they move gracefully, the bubbles rising gently to the surface, and the play of light and shadow on the sandy bottom of the tank. The slow, deliberate movements of the aquatic life create a calming rhythm, lulling you into a deeper state of relaxation. Feel a sense of connection with this peaceful underwater world. Imagine the cool water flowing gently past the glass, the soft touch of the currents, and the steady heartbeat of the ocean. The bed you are lying on is plush and wonderful, and you're pulling the thick duvet around you. Feel the soft mattress supporting your body and the gentle weight of the blankets wrapping you in warmth. It is time to close your eyes and let go, and listen to the soothing sounds of the aquarium. Gentle hum of the filtration system, the occasional soft splash, and the quiet movement of water. Your day is done. There is nothing else you have to do today. You're safe and at ease. You are in a place of pure tranquility, here in this private room in the aquarium. Allow yourself to drift off now into a night of restful, rejuvenating sleep, carried by the gentle whispers of the underwater world and the comfort of the cozy bed. The Jest That Failed. I think it is simply a disgrace to have a person like that in our class, said Edna Hayden in an injured tone. She doesn't seem a bit ashamed of it either, said Agnes Walters. Rather proud of it, I should say, returned her roommate spitefully. It seems to me that if I were so poor that I had to room myself and dress as stoutily as she does, that I really couldn't look anybody in the face. What must the boys think of her? And if it wasn't for her being in it, our class would be the smartest and dressiest in the college. Even those top lofty senior girls admit that. It's a shame, said Agnes conclusively, but she needn't expect to associate with our set. I, for one, won't have anything to do with her. Nor I. I think it is time she should be taught her place. If we could only manage to inflict some decided snub on her, she might take the hint and give up trying to poke herself in where she doesn't belong. The idea of her consenting to be elected under freshman executive. But she seems impervious to snubs. Edna, let's play a joke on her. It will serve her right. Let her send an invitation in somebody's name to the senior prom. The very thing, and sign Sidney Hill's name to it. He's the handsomest and richest fellow at Payson, and belongs to one of the best families in town, and is awfully fastidious besides. No doubt she will feel immensely flattered and, of course, she'll accept. Just think how silly she'll feel when she finds out he never sent it. Let's write it now and send it at once. There's no time to lose, for the prom is on Thursday night. The freshman co-eds at Payson College did not like Grace Seeley. That is to say, the majority of them. They were a decidedly snobbish class that year. No one could deny that Grace was clever, but she was poor, dressed very plainly, dowdily, the girl said, and roomed herself. That phrase meaning that she rented a little unfurnished room and cooked her own meals over an oil stove. The senior prom, as it was called, was the annual reception which the senior class gave in the middle of every autumn term. It was the smartest and gayest of all the college functions. And a Payson co-ed who received an invitation to it counted herself fortunate. The senior girls were included as a matter of course, but a junior, soph, or a freshie could not go unless one of the senior boys invited her. Grace Seeley was studying Greek in her tiny room that afternoon, when the invitation was brought to her. It was scrupulously orthodox in appearance and form, and Grace never doubted that it was genuine, although she felt much surprised that Sidney Hill, the leader of his class and the foremost figure in all college sports and societies, should have asked her to go with him to the senior prom. But she was girlishly pleased at the prospect. She was as fond of a good time as any other girl, and she had secretly wished very much that she could go to the brilliant and much talked about senior prom. Grace was quite unaware of her own unpopularity among her class co-eds, although she thought it was very hard to get acquainted with them, without any false pride herself and of a frank, independent nature. It never occurred to her that the other Payson freshies could look down on her because she was poor, or resent her presence among them because she dressed plainly. She straightway wrote a note of acceptance to Sidney Hill, and that young man naturally felt much mystified when he opened and read it in the college library next morning. Grace Seeley, he pondered. That's the jolly girl with the brown eyes that I met at the Philomathic the other night. She thanks me for my invitation to the senior prom, and accepts with pleasure. Why, I certainly never invited her or anyone else to go with me to the senior prom. There must be some mistake. Grace passed him at this moment on her way to the Latin classroom. She bowed and smiled in a friendly fashion, and Sidney Hill felt decidedly uncomfortable. What was he to do? He did not like to think of putting Miss Seeley in a false position, because somebody had sent her an invitation in his name. I suppose it is some cad who has a spite at me that has done it, he reflected, but if so, I'll spoil his game. I'll take Miss Seeley to the prom, as if I had never intended doing anything else. She shan't be humiliated because there's someone at Payson who would stoop to that sort of thing. So he walked up the hall with Grace and expressed his pleasure at her acceptance. And on the evening of the prom he sent her a bouquet of white carnations, whose spicy fragrance reminded her of her own little garden at home. Grace thought it extremely nice of him, and dressed in a flutter and pleasant anticipation. Her gown was a very simple one of sheer white organdy, and was the only evening dress she had. She knew there would be many smarter dresses at the reception, but the knowledge did not disturb her sensible head in the least. She fingered the dainty white frills lovingly as she remembered the sunny summer days at home in the little sewing room, with cherry boughs poked their blossoms in at the window, when her mother and sister had helped her to make it, with laughing prophecies and speculations as to its first appearance. Into seam and puff and frill many girlish hopes and dreams had been sown, and they all came back to Grace as she put it on, and helped to surround her with an atmosphere of happiness. When she was ready, she picked up her bouquet and looked herself over in the mirror, from the top of her curly head to the tips of her white shoes, with a little nod of satisfaction. Grace was not exactly pretty, but she had such a bright, happy face, and such merry brown eyes, and such a friendly smile, that she was very pleasant to look upon, and a great many people thought so that night. Grace had never, in all her life before, had so good a time as she had that senior prom. The seniors were quick to discover her unaffected originality and charm, and everywhere she went she was the center of a merry group. In short, Grace, as much to her own surprise as anyone's, found herself a social success. Presently Sidney brought his brother up to be introduced, and the latter said, "Miss Seeley, will you excuse my asking if you have a brother or a relative named Max Seeley?" Grace nodded. "Oh yes, my brother Max. He is a doctor out west." "I was sure of it," said Murray Hill triumphantly. "You resemble him so strongly. Please don't consider me a stranger a minute longer, for Max and I are like brothers. Indeed, I owe my life to him. Last summer I was out there on a surveying expedition, and I took typhoid in a little out-of-the-way place where no nursing was to be had, for love or money. Your brother attended me, and he managed to pull me through. He never left me day or night, until I was out of danger, and he worked like a Trojan for me." "Dear old Max," said Grace, her brown eyes shining with pride and pleasure. "That is so like him. He is such a dear brother, and I haven't seen him for 4 years. To see somebody who knows him so well is the next best thing to seeing himself." "He is an awful fine fellow," said Mr. Hill heartily. "And I'm delighted to have met the little sister he used to talk so much about. I want you to come ever and meet my mother and sister. They have heard me talk so much about Max that they think almost as much of him as I do. And they will be glad to meet his sister." Mrs. Hill, a handsome, dignified lady, who was one of the chaperones of the prom, received Grace warmly, while Beatrice Hill, an extremely pretty, smartly gowned girl, made her feel at home immediately. "You came with Sid, didn't you?" she whispered. "Sid is so sly, he never tells us whom he's going to take anywhere. But when I saw you come in with him, I knew I was going to like you. You looked so jolly. And you're really the sister of that splendid Dr. Seeley, who saved Murray's life last summer. And to think you've been at Payson nearly a whole term, and we never knew it." "Well, how have you enjoyed your prom, Miss Seeley?" asked Sid, as they walked home together under the arching elms of the college campus. "Oh, it was splendid," said Grace enthusiastically. "Everybody was so nice, and then to meet someone who could tell me so much about Max. I must write them home all about it before I sleep, just to calm my head a bit. Mother and the girls will be so interested, and I must send Lou and Mab a carnation apiece for their scrapbooks." "Give me one back, please," said Sid, and Grace, with a little blush, did so. That night, while Grace was slipping the stem of her carnations and putting them into water, 3 little bits of conversation were being carried on which it was necessary to report in order to round up the story neatly and properly, as all stories should be rounded up. In the first place, Beatrice Hill was saying to Sydney, "Oh, Sid, that Miss Seeley you had at the prom is a lovely girl. I don't know when I've met anyone I liked so much. She was so jolly and friendly, and she didn't put on learned airs at all, as so many of those peasant girls do. I asked her all about herself, and she told me, and all about her mother and sisters, and home, and the lovely times they had together, and how hard they worked to send her to college too, and how she taught school in vacations and roomed herself to help along. Isn't it so brave and plucky of her? I know we are going to be great friends." "I hope so," said Sydney briefly, "because I have an idea that she and I are going to be very good friends too." And Sydney went upstairs and put away a single white carnation very carefully. In the second place, Mrs. Hill was saying to her eldest son, "I liked that Miss Seeley very much. She seemed a very sweet girl." And finally, Agnes Walters and Edna Hayden were discussing the matter in great mystification in their room. "I can't understand it at all," said Agnes slowly. "Sid Hill took her to the prom, and he must have sent her those carnations too. She could never have afforded them herself. And did you see the fuss his people made over her? I heard Beatrice telling her that she was coming to call on her tomorrow, and Mrs. Hill said she must look upon Beach Lawn as a second home while she was at Payson. If the Hills are going to take her up, we'll have to be nice to her." "I suppose," said Edna conclusively, "the truth of the matter is that Sid Hill meant to ask her anyway. I dare say he asked her long ago, and she would know our invitation was a fraud. So the joke is on ourselves after all. But, as you and I know, that, with the exception of the last sentence, was not the truth of the matter at all." The Penningtons' girl. Winslow had been fishing, or pretending to, all the morning, and he was desperately thirsty. He boarded with the Beckwiths on the Riverside East Shore, but he was nearer Riverside West, and he knew the Penningtons well. He had often been there for bait and milk, and had listened times out of mind to Mrs. Pennington's dismal tales of her tribulations with hired girls. She never could get along with them, and they left, on an average, after a fortnight's trial. She was on the lookout for one now. He knew, and would likely be cross, but he thought she should give him a drink. He rowed the skiff into the shore and tied it to a fir that hung out from the bank. A winding little footpath led up to the Pennington farmhouse, which crested the hill about 300 yards from the shore. Winslow made for the kitchen door, and came face to face with a girl carrying a pail of water. Mrs. Pennington's latest thing in hired girls, of course. Winslow's first bewildered thought was, what a goddess! And he wondered, as he politely asked for a drink, where on earth Mrs. Pennington had picked her up. She handed him a shining dipper half full, and stood, pail in hand, while he drank it. She was rather tall, and wore a somewhat limp, faded print gown, and a big sun hat beneath which a glossy knot of chestnut showed itself. Her skin was very fair, somewhat freckled, and her mouth was delicious. As for her eyes, they were grey, but beyond that simply defied description. "Will you have some more?" she asked in a soft, drawling voice. "No, thank you. That was delicious. Is Mrs. Pennington home?" "No, she's gone away for the day." "Well, I suppose I can sit down here and rest a while. You've no serious objections, have you?" "Oh, no." She carried her pail into the kitchen, and came out again presently with a knife and a pan of apples. Sitting down on a bench under the poplars, she proceeded to peel them with a disregard of his presence that piqued Winslow, who was not used to being ignored in this fashion. Besides, as a general rule, he had been quite good friends with Mrs. Pennington's hired girls. She had had 3 strapping damsels during his sojourn in Riverside, and he used to sit on this very doorstep and chaff them. They had all been saucy and talkative. This girl was evidently a new species. "Do you think you'll get along with Mrs. Pennington?" he asked finally. "As a rule, she fights with her help, although she is a most estimable woman." The girl smiled quite broadly. "I guess perhaps she's rather hard to suit," was the answer. "But I like her pretty well so far. I think we'll get along with each other. If you don't, I can leave, like the others did." "What is your name?" "Nellie Ray." "Well, Nellie, I hope you'll be able to keep your place. Let me give you a bit of friendly advice. Don't let the cats get into the pantry. That is what Mrs. Pennington has quarreled with nearly every one of her girls about." "It is quite a bother to keep them out, ain't it?" said Nellie calmly. "There's dozens of cats about the place. What on earth makes them keep so many?" "Mr. Pennington has a mania for cats. He and Mrs. Pennington have a standing disagreement about it. The last girl left her because she couldn't stand the cats. They affected her nerves, she said. I hope you don't mind them." "Oh, no, I kind of like cats. I've been trying to count them. Has anyone ever done that?" "Not that I know of. I tried, but I had to give up in despair. Never could tell when I was counting the same cat over again. Look at that black goblin sunning himself on the woodpile. I say, Nellie, you're not going, are you?" "I must. It's time to get dinner. Mr. Pennington will be in from the field soon." The next minute he heard her, stepping briskly about the kitchen, shooing out intruding cats, and humming a darkly air to herself. He went reluctantly back to the shore and rowed across the river in a brown study. I don't know whether Winslow was afflicted with chronic thirst or not, or whether the east side water wasn't so good as that of the west side. But I do know that he fairly haunted the Pennington farmhouse after that. Mrs. Pennington was home the next time he went, and he asked her about the new girl. To his surprise, the good lady was unusually reticent. She couldn't really say very much about Nellie. No, she didn't belong anywhere near Riverside. In fact, she, Mrs. Pennington, didn't think she had any settled home at present. Her father was traveling over the country somewhere. Nellie was a good little girl, and very obliging. Beyond this, Winslow could get no more information. So I went around and talked to Nellie, who was sitting on the bench under the poplars and seemed absorbed in watching the sunset. She dropped her G's badly and made some grammatical errors that caused Winslow's flesh to creep on his bones. But any man could have forgiven mistakes from such dimpled lips and such a sweet voice. He asked her to go for a row up the river in the twilight, and she assented. She handled an oar very well, he found out, and the exercise became her. Winslow tried to get her to talk about herself, but failed signally and had to content himself with Mrs. Pennington's meager information. He told her about himself frankly enough, how he had had fever in the spring and had been ordered to spend the summer in the country and do nothing useful until his health was fully restored, and how lonesome it was in Riverside in general, and at the Beckwith farm in particular. He made out quite a dismal case for himself, and if Nellie wasn't sorry for him, she should have been. At the end of a fortnight, the Riverside folks began to talk about Winslow and the Penningtons' hired girl. He was reported to be dead gone on her. He took her out rowing every evening, drove her to preaching up the bend on Sunday nights, and haunted the Pennington farmhouse. Wise folks shook their heads over it and wondered that Mrs. Pennington allowed it. Winslow was a gentleman, and that Nellie Ray, whom nobody knew anything about, not even where she came from, was only a common hired girl, and he had no business to be hanging about her. She was pretty, to be sure, but she was absurdly stuck up, and wouldn't associate with other Riverside help at all. Well, pride must have a fall. There must be something queer about her when she was so awful sly as to her past life. Winslow and Nellie did not trouble themselves in the least over all this gossip. In fact, they never even heard it. Winslow was hopelessly in love. When he found this out, he was aghast. He thought of his father, the ambitious railroad magnate, of his mother, the brilliant society leader, of his sisters, the beautiful and proud. He was honestly frightened. It would never do. He must not go to see Nellie again. He kept this prudent resolution for 24 hours, and then rode over to the west shore. He found Nellie sitting on the bank in her old faded print dress, and he straightway forgot everything he ought to have remembered. Nellie herself never seemed to be conscious of the social gulf between them. At least she never alluded to it in any way, and accepted Winslow's attentions as if she had a perfect right to them. She had broken the record by staying with Mrs. Pennington 4 weeks, and even the cats were in subjection. Winslow was well enough to have gone back to the city, and, in fact, his father was writing for him, but he couldn't leave Beckwith's apparently. At any rate, he stayed on and met Nellie every day, and cursed himself for a cad and a cur, and a weak-brained idiot. One day, he took Nellie for a row up the river. He went further than usual around the bend. Winslow didn't want to go too far, for he knew that a party of his city friends, chaperoned by Mrs. Keaton Wells, were having a picnic somewhere up along the river shore that day. But Nellie insisted on going on, and of course she had her way. When they reached the little pine-fringed headland, they came upon the picnickers, within a stone's throw. Everybody recognized Winslow. "Why, there is Burton," he heard Mrs. Keaton Wells exclaim, and he knew she was putting up her glasses. Will Evans, who was an especial chum of his, ran down to the water's edge. "Bless me, Win, where did you come from? Come right in. We haven't had tea yet. Bring your friend too," he added, becoming conscious that Winslow's friend was a mighty pretty girl. Winslow's face was crimson. He avoided Nellie's eyes. "Are them people friends of yours?" she asked in a low tone. "Yes," he muttered. "Well, let us go ashore if they want us to," she said calmly. "I don't mind." For 3 seconds, Winslow hesitated. Then he pulled ashore and helped Nellie to alight on a jutting rock. There was a curious, sad expression about his fine mouth as he marched Nellie up to Mrs. Keaton-Wells and introduced her. Mrs. Keaton-Wells's greeting was slightly cool, but very polite. She supposed Miss Ray was some little country girl with whom Burton Winslow was carrying on a summer flirtation. Respectable enough, no doubt, and must be treated civilly, but of course wouldn't expect to be made an equal of exactly. The other women took their cue from her, but the men were more cordial. Miss Ray might be shabby, but she was distinctly fetching, and Winslow looked savage. Nellie was not a whit abashed, seemingly, by the fashionable circle in which she found herself, and she talked away to Will Evans and the others in her soft drawl, as if she had known them all her life. All might have gone passably well, had not a little riverside imp, by name of Rufus Hand, who had been picked up by the picnickers to run their errands, come up just then with a pail of water. "Golly," he ejaculated in his very audible tones, "if there ain't Mrs. Pennington's hired girl." Mrs. Keaton-Wells stiffened with horror. Winslow darted a furious glance at the telltale that would have annihilated anything except a small boy. Will Evans grinned and went on talking to Nellie, who had failed to hear, or at least to heed, the exclamation. The mischief was done. The social thermometer went down to 0 in Nellie's neighborhood. The women ignored her altogether. Winslow set his teeth together and registered a mental vow to wring Rufus Hunt's sunburnt neck at the first opportunity. He escorted Nellie to the table and waited on her with ostentatious deference, while Mrs. Keaton-Wells glanced at him stonily and made up her mind to tell his mother when she went home. Nellie's social ostracism did not affect her appetite, but after lunch was over, she walked down to the skiff. Winslow followed her. "Do you want to go home?" he asked. "Yes, it's time I went, for the cats may be raiding the pantry. But you must not come. Your friends here want you." "Nonsense," said Winslow sulkily. "If you are going, I am too." But Nellie was too quick for him. She sprang into the skiff, unwound the rope, and pushed off before he guessed her intention. "I can row myself home. I mean to," she announced, taking up the oars defiantly. "Nellie," he implored. Nellie looked at him wickedly. "You'd better go back to your friends. That old woman with the eyeglasses is watching you." Winslow said something strong under his breath as he went back to the others. Will Evans and his chums began to chaff him about Nellie, but he looked so dangerous that they concluded to stop. There is no denying that Winslow was in a fearful temper just then with Mrs. Keaton-Wells, Evans, himself, Nellie, in fact, with all the world. His friends drove him home in the evening on the way to the station, and dropped him at the Beckwith farm. At dusk he went moodily down to the shore. Far up the bend was dim and shadowy, and stars were shining above the wooded shores. Over the river, the Pennington farm lights twinkled out alluringly. Winslow watched them until he could stand it no longer. Nellie had made off with his skiff. But Perry Beckwith's dory was ready to hand. In 5 minutes, Winslow was grounding her on the west shore. Nellie was sitting on a rock at the landing place. He went over and sat down silently beside her. A full moon was rising above the dark hills up the bend, and in the faint light the girl was wonderfully lovely. "I thought you weren't coming over at all tonight," she said, smiling at him. "And I was sorry because I wanted to say goodbye to you." "Goodbye? Nellie, you're not going away?" "Yes, the cats were in the pantry when I got home." Nelly. Well, to be serious, I'm not going for that, but I really am going. I had a letter from Dad this evening. Did you have a good time after I left this afternoon? Did Mrs. Keaton-Wells tell you? Hang Mrs. Keaton-Wells. Nelly, where are you going? To Dad, of course. We used to live down south together, but 2 months ago we broke up housekeeping and came north. We thought we could do better up here, you know. Dad started out to look for a place to settle down, and I came here while he was prospecting. He's got a house now, he says, and wants me to go right off. I'm going tomorrow. Nelly, you mustn't go. You mustn't, I tell you, exclaimed Winslow in despair. I love you. I love you. You must stay with me forever. You don't know what you're saying, Mr. Winslow, said Nelly coldly. Why, you can't marry me, a common servant girl. I can and I will, if you'll have me, answered Winslow recklessly. I can't ever let you go. I've loved you ever since I first saw you. Nelly, won't you be my wife? Don't you love me? Well, yes, I do, confessed Nelly suddenly. And then it was fully 5 minutes before Winslow gave her a chance to say anything else. Oh, what will your people say? She contrived to ask at last. Won't I be in a dreadful state? Oh, it will never do for you to marry me. Won't it? Said Winslow in a tone of satisfaction. I rather think it will. Of course, my family will rampage a bit at first. I dare say Father'll turn me out. Don't worry over that, Nelly. I'm not afraid of work. I'm not afraid of anything except losing you. You'll have to see what Dad says, remarked Nelly after another eloquent interlude. He won't object, will he? I'll write to him or go and see him. Where is he? He is in town at the Arlington. The Arlington? Winslow was amazed. The Arlington was the most exclusive and expensive hotel in town. What is he doing there? Transacting a real estate or railroad deal with your father, I believe, or something of that sort. Nelly. Well, what do you mean? Just what I say. Winslow got up and looked at her. Nelly, who are you? Helen Ray Scott, at your service, sir. Not Helen Ray Scott, the daughter of the railroad king. The same. Are you sorry that you're engaged to her? If you are, she'll stay Nelly Ray. Winslow dropped back on the seat with a long breath. Nelly, I don't understand. Why did you deceive me? I feel stunned. Oh, do forgive me, she said merrily. I shouldn't have, I suppose, but you know, you took me for the hired girl the first time you saw me, and you patronized me and called me Nelly. So I let you think so, just for fun. I never thought it would come to this. When Father and I came north, I took a fancy to come here and stay with Mrs. Pennington, who is an old nurse of mine, until Father decided where to take up our abode. I got here the night before we met. My trunk was delayed, so I put on an old cotton dress her niece had left here. And you came and saw me. I made Mrs. Pennington keep the secret. She thought it great fun, and I really was a great hand to do little chores and keep the cats in subjection too. I made mistakes in grammar and dropped my G's on purpose. It was such fun to see you wince when I did it. It was cruel to tease you so, I suppose, but it was so sweet just to be loved for myself. Not because I was an heiress and a belle. I couldn't bear to tell you the truth. Did you think I couldn't read your thoughts this afternoon when I insisted on going ashore? You were a little ashamed of me. You know you were. I didn't blame you for that, but if you hadn't gone ashore and taken me, as you did, I would never have spoken to you again. Mrs. Keaton Wells won't snub me next time we meet. And some way, I don't think your father will turn you out either. Have you forgiven me yet, Burton? I shall never call you anything but Nellie, said Winslow irrelevantly.